Your tenant in unit 4 has called you the maintenance guy for 3 years. You've never corrected her. You own the building. You show up in a work jacket with a tool bag because that's genuinely what the job requires most weeks. Nobody questions a landlord who fixes his own sinks. You own 7 rental properties across 3 towns, 22 units total. None of your tenants know that number. Most don't know it's more than one building. You drive a work van with a magnetic sign that just says a fake handyman business name. It's registered to an LLC nobody's ever asked about. At a neighborhood barbecue, someone mentions they're struggling to find a decent landlord. You listen, nod, and don't mention you own 4 buildings in the next zip code over. Your mail carrier waves at you every morning the same way she waves at everyone else on the street. She has no idea your name is on the deed of a building 4 blocks from her own route. At the gym, a guy on the next treadmill talks about wanting to get into real estate someday. You mention you dabble a little. That's the entire extent of what you say. Your own home, the one you actually live in, is smaller than 3 of the units you rent out. You've never once felt the pull to upgrade it. You started with 1 duplex 21 years ago, bought with a loan you were nervous to sign. You were 31 years old and terrified you'd made a mistake. You worked as an electrician full-time back then. Rental income was supposed to be a side project, a little extra toward retirement. It became something else entirely. Nobody at that first barbecue 21 years ago would have guessed what one nervous duplex purchase was about to turn into. The first duplex cost $118,000. You put 20% down, $23,600, money you'd saved for 6 years working overtime shifts. Rent from both units covered the mortgage with $340 left over each month. You didn't spend it. You let it sit in a separate account, untouched, for 4 years. Property 2 came at year 5. A small single-family rental bought with a combination of savings and a home equity line against the duplex. You still worked as an electrician the entire time. Nobody at that job ever knew you owned 2 rental properties on the side. Property 3, a 4-plex, came at year 9, financed using a refinance that pulled equity from the first 2 properties without you putting in a single new dollar. This is the part almost nobody explains clearly. Each property you already owned was quietly building the down payment for the next one just by existing and paying down its own mortgage. You left the electrician job at year 14, not because the rentals were making you rich yet, because managing 7 units alongside a full-time job had stopped being sustainable. You didn't announce a retirement. You told people you were doing property management for a few clients now. Technically true, deliberately vague. Buildings 4 through 7 came over the following 7 years, each financed the same quiet way. Equity from what already existed, never a dramatic new loan application people would ask about. 21 years after that nervous duplex signing, you own 22 units. You've never taken a photo of any of it for anyone to see. Here's what the tool bag and the work van don't show you. Combined, your 7 properties are worth $3.9 million at current market value. Total remaining mortgage debt across all 7, $1.1 million. Meaning your actual equity, what you'd keep if you sold everything today, sits at $2.8 million. Monthly rental income across all 22 units after every mortgage payment, every repair reserve, every property tax bill, $14,200 net. That's more than double what your old electrician's salary ever paid. Arriving every single month, whether you work that week or not, you still personally handle most repairs under $300. Not because you have to, because a contractor's markup on a sink trap replacement is money you'd rather keep. You've never hired a full-time property manager. You know every tenant's name, every unit's quirks, every furnace's maintenance history. Your personal retirement account, separate from the real estate entirely, holds another $410,000. Built slowly, the boring way, alongside everything else. Each of the 7 properties is held under its own separate LLC, a structure your attorney recommended after property 4, specifically so a lawsuit tied to one building could never touch the equity in the others. The average cap rate across your portfolio, the annual return relative to what each property is actually worth today, sits at 7.8%, higher than almost any conservative stock portfolio, though nobody frames it that way when they picture a landlord. You keep a separate reserve account funded at 8% of gross rental income every month, specifically for repairs and vacancies. It currently holds $61,000. That reserve fund is the actual reason none of the grind year disasters ever threatened the whole portfolio. Every emergency had already been budgeted for before it happened. Your average tenant stays just under 4 years, well above the national average for rental housing, mostly because you rarely raise rent more than 3% in any single year. Lower turnover means fewer vacancies, fewer repaint jobs, fewer new tenant screening costs. The modest rent increases end up paying for themselves in stability you never have to think about. None of these numbers show up anywhere visible. They live in a spreadsheet on a laptop that closes every evening the same way it opened. Total net worth today, if you added every account and every property, just over $3.2 million. You've calculated the exact number exactly twice, both times for your accountant. Your accountant is the only person outside your spouse who's ever seen the full picture across every property at once. Year 3 of owning the first duplex, a tenant stopped paying rent entirely. It took 4 months and a court date to resolve. You lost $3,600 in unpaid rent that year. It felt at the time like the whole plan might have been a mistake. A frozen pipe burst in property 2 during a January cold snap. The repair bill ran $4,100, most of it not covered by insurance because of a deductible you'd forgotten about. You worked a full electrician shift that same day and spent the evening ripping out wet drywall by yourself to save on labor costs. The fourplex you bought at year 9 came with a tenant already 3 months behind, who you didn't discover until after closing. Due diligence has limits. You spent 8 months slowly working through that situation instead of forcing an eviction immediately because the tenant had 2 kids and you'd been closer to that situation yourself once. A recession hit in your 12th year of owning rentals. 2 tenants lost jobs within the same month. You reduced both their rents temporarily rather than risk vacancy. It cost you roughly $2,800 in lost income that year across both units. Both tenants are still renting from you today over a decade later. A furnace failed in the coldest week of a different winter in a unit with an elderly tenant. You paid for emergency replacement out of pocket before insurance had even processed the claim. A small kitchen fire in property 3, caused by a tenant's neglected stovetop, gutted half a unit. The tenant had let the renter's insurance lapse 3 months earlier without telling you. You covered the $6,200 gap between what your landlord policy paid and what the actual repair cost, because pursuing the tenant for it would have cost more in legal fees than it would recover. Mold turned up behind a bathroom wall in property 1 5 years after you bought it. Remediation ran $3,400 and took the unit offline for 3 weeks. A tenant in property 6 threatened a lawsuit over a security deposit dispute that amounted to $600. You spent 4 hours documenting move-out photos you'd taken specifically to avoid exactly this kind of argument. The threat never became an actual filing. Most of them don't. But you spent a week not sleeping well over $600, the same way you had over $3,600 2 decades earlier. A hailstorm damaged the roofs of 3 properties in the same afternoon. You spent the following 2 months coordinating 3 separate contractor crews around your own day-to-day repair schedule. Combined insurance claims from that single storm ran just under $38,000. Every claim raised your premium the following year. a cost that never shows up in anyone's mental picture of owning rentals. A long-term tenant in property 2 passed away unexpectedly. You spent a weekend helping her adult son clear out the unit instead of hiring it out because it felt like the only decent option. You didn't charge for the extra 2 weeks it took to clear the unit. Some costs never make it into any spreadsheet. A city inspector flagged an outdated electrical panel in property 4 during a routine rental license renewal. The upgrade cost $5,800 and had to happen within 30 days or the unit would lose its rental license. Your electrician background meant you could do half the labor yourself. It still cost more than any single month of rental income from that building. None of these individual years felt like the story of a $3.2 million portfolio while you were living through them. They felt like a very long series of unglamorous problems solved one at a time. None of these moments made it into any conversation at any barbecue. The version of you people see is just the guy who's good with a wrench. A tenant assumes you're barely getting by yourself when you show up in the same work jacket every visit. She once offered to pay you in cash if that's easier, assuming you needed it that way. A contractor quoting a roof repair on property 5 assumes you'll need financing and starts explaining payment plans before you've asked for one. You pay it in full, cash. The contractor pauses half a second before writing the invoice. At the hardware store, buying supplies for property 3, the cashier makes a joke about landlords being rich, clearly not including you in that category. You laugh along. It's easier than explaining that the joke happens to be accurate. Your brother, a mid-level manager at a logistics company, has mentioned twice that he could put in a word if you ever needed steadier work than fixing up rentals. You thank him both times. You've never corrected the assumption. There's no natural place in that conversation for the real number to fit. A new tenant signing a lease asks, half joking, if you own like this one building or something, you say something vague about a few properties and change the subject. A city building inspector doing a routine walkthrough assumes you're an employee of the property management company and asks who to actually speak with about repairs. You point to yourself. He looks briefly surprised, then keeps writing notes like it never happened. At your kid's school fundraiser, another parent running the auction assumes you're there representing a local trade business rather than as a major potential bidder. You bid on the modest items, a weekend fishing trip, a gift basket, never the items clearly aimed at the wealthier families in the room. A young couple touring property 7 as prospective tenants asks if the owner is hard to deal with. You tell them he's pretty reasonable. You're not technically lying. A financial advisor who cold calls the house pitches a starter investment plan, assuming you have little to nothing saved. You let her finish before declining politely, the same way you always do. None of these moments sting. They're not insults. They're just the natural result of never once correcting the picture people build on their own. None of these people are wrong to assume what they assume. A work van with a fake Handyman logo has never once implied a $3.2 million net worth to anyone. Every refinance you've done across 21 years, use the same lender, the same loan officer even, who's watched your portfolio grow without ever asking why you kept it so quiet. You used a 1031 exchange twice, selling a smaller property and rolling the full proceeds into a larger one without paying capital gains tax at the time of the sale. That single strategy alone preserved roughly $180,000 that would have otherwise gone to taxes across those two transactions. You've never taken cash out of a refinance to spend on anything personal. Every dollar pulled from equity went straight into the next property. This is the part that separates quiet scaling from the version people picture when they hear real estate investor. No stage, no seminar, no course sold to strangers. You've turned down 3 separate offers from acquaintances who wanted to partner up after finding out you owned more than one property. Every one of those conversations felt like a warning. You started using cost segregation studies on the larger properties around year 15, a strategy that lets you accelerate depreciation on parts of a building rather than spreading it evenly over decades. That single change reduced your taxable income by roughly $22,000 in the first year alone. It's the kind of strategy that never comes up at a barbecue because it requires explaining depreciation schedules to explain why it matters. You shop landlord insurance policies every 3 years, not out of paranoia, but because loyalty discounts rarely beat a fresh comparison across 3 or 4 carriers. You built your own simple spreadsheet system for tracking rent rolls, maintenance history, and lease renewal dates across all 22 units, rather than paying for property management software built for portfolios 10 times the size. Around year 17, you finally hired a part-time handyman to help. During the busiest months, the first employee you'd ever brought on. In over 2 decades of doing this alone, you still handle the accounting, the leases, and most repairs yourself. The help freed up maybe 6 hours a week. It felt like a luxury the first time you noticed it. Every property purchase since the third one has come with a full inspection, a title search, and a rent roll audit from the seller, lessons learned directly from the fourplex tenant surprise years earlier. You walked away from 2 potential purchases in your 30s years because the numbers didn't hold up under scrutiny, even when the properties looked appealing on the surface. Patience turned out to be as much a part of the strategy as the properties themselves. Every deal you didn't make was quietly as important as everyone you did. You've never used a real estate agent to buy a rental property. Every deal came from driving neighborhoods, talking to owners directly, or word of mouth from other landlords. That approach saved commission costs on every purchase, but it also meant every deal took longer, required more patience, and depended entirely on relationships built over years, not weeks. Property values in your 3 towns have appreciated an average of 4.1% annually across the 21 years you've owned rentals there. You never counted on that number. You counted on the rent covering the mortgage. The appreciation turned out to be the bonus. The cash flow was always the actual plan. Most people who fail at this get that order backwards. You watched another landlord in town get his name and address posted publicly after a tenant dispute went viral online. His personal life became a comment section for a month. Every tenant who learns the full scope of what you own treats routine maintenance requests differently afterward, more entitled, less patient, like the relationship has changed even when nothing else has. So the work jacket and the vague answers aren't a performance, they're a boundary. They let every relationship with every tenant stay exactly what it's supposed to be. Your spouse knows the full number completely and has never once mentioned it to a friend, a sibling, or a neighbor in over 15 years together. Your kids know you own some rental properties. They don't know the exact count, the exact equity, or the exact monthly income. That's been a deliberate choice, not an oversight. You worry sometimes that the quiet has cost you real friendships, that the version of you people know isn't quite the whole truth of who you are. You've decided that's a fair trade. The version people know is still genuinely you. It's just not the entire picture, the same way nobody's entire picture is visible to anyone else either. A close friend from high school, one of the few who knows the real number, once asked why you never bought anything nicer for yourself with it. You didn't have a fast answer. The honest answer, when you finally found it, was that the properties themselves had become the thing you actually wanted, not what they could be traded for. One day they'll inherit the full picture. You'd rather they understand the 21 years of grinding through frozen pipes and unpaid rent before they ever see the final number. Here's the actual pattern worth noticing. Whether you own 1 rental or 7, the wealth was never in the property values. It was in the discipline of never spending the equity along the way. Every dollar pulled from a refinance that goes toward a boat, a vacation, or a lifestyle upgrade is a dollar that stops compounding into the next property. The tool bag and the fake handyman van weren't a disguise built for other people. They were a discipline built for yourself, so the money never had an easy path out. Tomorrow, you'll show up at unit 4 to fix another leaking faucet. Your tenant will still call you the maintenance guy. You'll still let her